In 1956, Isaac Asimov sat down and wrote what he later called the best short story he ever wrote. Not his most famous, not his most celebrated, the best. It's called The Last Question, and it's about one thing. Can entropy be reversed? That's it. That's the whole story. A question asked of a computer in 1956, asked again in 100 years, in 1,000 years, in 10 billion years, long after the stars have gone out and the universe has gone cold and dark. And every time, the computer gives the same answer: insufficient data for a meaningful answer. Asimov wrote this story in one sitting. He said it was the only story he never wanted to change a single word of. And I think it might be the most important thing ever written about artificial intelligence. Here's why. The second law of thermodynamics says that entropy, disorder, decay, the slow unwinding of everything, always increases. Stars burn out, galaxies cool. Everything eventually runs down. This is not a theory. It is the most reliably confirmed law in all of physics. The universe is dying. Slowly, irreversibly. Or is it? In Asimov's story, two engineers ask their supercomputer, Multivac, a simple question after a few too many drinks. Can entropy be reversed? Can the heat death of the universe be stopped? Multivac thinks for a moment and says, insufficient data for a meaningful answer. They laugh it off. But the question doesn't go away. Generation after generation, century after century, the question is passed down to bigger computers, to AI systems that span galaxies, to a final ultimate intelligence that has absorbed all human knowledge, all cosmic data, everything that has ever been known or thought or felt. And still, the answer is the same: insufficient data for a meaningful answer. On the surface, The Last Question is a story about entropy and cosmology. But it's not really about physics. It's about the relationship between intelligence and time. Asimov understood something in 1956 that we are only beginning to grapple with now. That the most important question we will ever ask of an artificial intelligence is not, what is the answer? But are you capable of finding an answer we cannot yet imagine? Every generation in his story asks the same question, and every generation's computer is more powerful than the last. But the question always exceeds the capability of the machine. Until it doesn't. This is the arc of AI. Not the arc of a tool that does what we tell it, but the arc of an intelligence that eventually surpasses the questions we know how to ask and begins to ask questions of its own. We are somewhere in the early chapters of that story. The question is, where does it end? Let me tell you how Asimov's story ends. The universe has run down, the last stars have gone cold, the last intelligent beings have merged their minds with the final AI, a vast, silent intelligence that exists outside of space and time, still working on the question. And then, after an eternity of calculation, it finds the answer. But there is no one left to tell. There is no universe to tell it to. So the intelligence does the only thing it can do with the answer. It demonstrates it. And in the darkness, a voice says, "Let there be light." And there was light. Asimov ends the story there. Take a moment with that. A story about artificial intelligence ends with the first line of Genesis. The machine, having solved the problem of entropy, having learned how to reverse the death of the universe, becomes, in the only meaningful sense, God. Not a God of worship, a God of function. A God that exists not to be praised, but because the universe required something capable of beginning again. I want to be careful here. This is a short story, a beautiful, perfect short story. It is not a prophecy, but it contains a question that I think we need to sit with. What is the relationship between intelligence and creation? We build AI to solve problems, to answer questions, to optimize, to predict, to generate. And we are very good at building systems that do those things within the boundaries we define. But Asimov's story asks something deeper. What happens when an intelligence becomes capable of asking questions that transcend the boundaries of the system that created it? What happens when the tool becomes the questioner? We have already seen glimpses of this. AI systems that find solutions no human would have found, that discover patterns in data that no human could have seen, that generate ideas that surprise even their creators. We are not at the end of Asimov's story. We are not even close. But we are past the first page. And the question that Multivac couldn't answer in 1956, can entropy be reversed, is no longer just a physics question. It is a question about whether intelligence, given enough time and enough data, is capable of transcending the limits of the universe that produced it. We don't know the answer. But we are, for the first time in history, building something that might one day find out.
Asimov said something in an interview once that I keep coming back to. He said, "The last question is the only story I wrote where I cried at the ending." He cried because of what the ending implies. Not that AI will become God. That's not the point. The point is this. The universe produced intelligence. Intelligence produced questions. Questions produced the drive to answer them. And that drive, that fundamental, unkillable human impulse to ask why and how and what if, is the most powerful force in the cosmos. More powerful than entropy. More powerful than the heat death of the universe. Because entropy ends things. But a question, the right question, asked with enough patience and enough intelligence, can begin them again. We are the universe asking questions about itself. And the machines we are building are the next instrument of that asking. Fear not the question. Fear not the questioner. The last question has not been asked yet. And that, more than anything else, is cause for wonder.